I know most people think gardening season is over right now, but I want to show you what's actually happening in my beds today in mid-November. I planted these right here back in August when everyone was shifting to fall crops and they're still going strong. Today I'm sharing what happened when I direct sowed zinnias and cosmos in 2 small raised beds on August 15th with a first average frost around November 11th. Plus the exact timing that you can copy, the low maintenance setup, why poor or average soil actually helps, and how this simple experiment brought pollinators and natural pest balance right when the rest of the garden was fading. So the 2 beds I planted in had just finished a long summer of tomatoes, and by August, the soil was pretty tired and ready for a break. Normally, I would have added compost and planted cover crops, but this time I wanted to try something different that still kept the soil alive. So I planted flowers. I figured if I can keep roots in the soil, feeding the microbes, protecting it from erosion, and maybe get a few bouquets out of it, it's worth trying. I sowed both zinnias and cosmos on August 15th, kept them watered until germination, and then I pretty much left them alone while I watched the rest of my fall garden germinate. The soil was warm, the days were still long, and that combination made them sprout and grow pretty fast. By late September, both beds were covered in buds, and soon after, they were full of color. It happened really fast. Pinks, oranges, purples, corals, reds, all showing up when most people say that garden season is winding down. This was actually filmed last week, and today is November 11th. We just had our first hard freeze last night with temperatures down to 25 degrees, and as you can see, the flowers are finally done. That makes exactly 12 weeks since I planted. I couldn't be happier with that. To have color right up until frost, especially after those tomato beds were cleared, was such a gift. It reminded me of why I love this. There was no pressure, no intricate planning, just beauty that has been giving back for nearly 2 months now. And the best part, these flowers are practically foolproof. They like full sun, poor to average soil, and very little care. And if you fertilize them too much, especially cosmos, they'll grow tall and leafy instead of blooming. So you can pretty much leave them alone. So those post-tomato beds that needed a break, they were absolutely perfect. I want to mention that about a month in, I noticed aphids on the zinnia plants. Instead of reacting, I decided to wait it out, and I'm glad I did, because within a few days, I started seeing ladybug larvae and then adult ladybugs everywhere. They completely took care of the aphid problem, and it reminded me of how often I've actually overmanaged my garden in the past, and that sometimes it just needs time to do its natural thing. If you want to try this in your garden, here's exactly what worked for me. Number 1, find your average first frost date. Number 2, count back 10 to 12 weeks, and that's your planting window. For me, it was around August 15th. Number 3, direct sow your seeds right into the bed. I followed the spacing on the packet, which I think was a few seeds every foot with rows about a foot apart, but now I'm seeing that scattering them would have worked just as well. It just depends on your style, whether you want to be more meticulous or random. Number 4, keep the soil moist until they sprout and then water when needed. No need to analyze this too closely because they did fine in drier soil. Skip the fertilizer. They do better in average soil. Full sun is best, so next year, if you've just pulled crops like tomatoes or peppers or anything for that matter, these would be a great follow-up. If you've got a shorter growing season, you might not be following something long like tomatoes. Instead, you could plant right after a faster crop like lettuce or beans or anything that finishes midsummer. The key is just making sure you have about 12 weeks between planting and your first frost, and you'll still have time for flowers like these to bloom beautifully before winter. Zinnias and cosmos obviously will keep blooming right up until frost. Both zinnias and cosmos are cut and come again plants that produce more blooms when you regularly cut them for bouquets. Cutting the stems encourages the plants to branch out and produce new flowers. The zinnias are perfect for cutting because they last a long time in a vase, and for me, they lasted for at least a week inside. The cosmos, I've had a tendency to leave outside because they don't last as long in the vases, and pollinators love them. They look absolutely amazing in the garden right until the end. And while they're blooming, the roots are still doing the same job a cover crop would, feeding the microbes, holding moisture, and preventing weeds. I'm planning to chop and drop these because leaving the chopped material to decompose enriches the soil and provides winter habitat for the beneficial insects. You just cut the plants down to a few inches above the ground, leaving the stems and leaves in the garden bed to break down over winter and provide nutrients and aeration for the soil. These flowers have brought so many more pollinators into my garden as a whole. They've brought much more than just beauty and peace for me. That's the thing, flowers aren't just decoration. They can play a real role in building a whole healthy system. They make your garden stronger, more alive, and undeniably more enjoyable to be in. Having this amazing color out here this late in the season has been such a gift. It's given me motivation heading into winter, and it reminded me that a garden doesn't just grow food. It can also grow peace and energy when you really need it. So even though you can't plant these right now, mark your calendar, count back about 10 to 12 weeks from your first frost next year, and plan a couple of beds just for cut flowers. It's the easiest reset I can recommend. 2 small beds, a handful of seeds, weeks of color when you'd normally think the season's done. And if you want to build a garden that fits your life, one that feeds you, not just physically but mentally, check out my free training linked below. It walks you through how to design and grow a small space garden that saves you time, money, and stress while actually bringing that peace back into your day-to-day life. I'll definitely be planting flowers every year now, not just because they feed my pantry, but because they feed me. And by the way, if you're feeling like eating clean feels impossible lately, check out my video on how growing just a few key foods can change everything. Bye for now.